Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Emily. It is great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited that we're doing this live, and we have some questions from some live participants. So make sure to put them in the Q&A as we go. And I'm going to do a little introduction of Emily as well here while you're all live, so you can see the behind the scenes of what happens. Emily Sussell is a private yoga teacher, an entrepreneur, and the founder of Abundant Yogi Coaching. After successfully building Private Yoga Brooklyn, her in-home private yoga service in New York City, Emily began mentoring and coaching yoga teachers globally. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Emily. I'm so excited to have you on the show today to talk to us about how to grow a private yoga business, because this is your specialty. It's your niche. So tell us, where did your journey begin and how did you get to where you are today?
Thank you so much, Shannon. And first of all, thank you again for having me. I'm a big fan of everything that you do. I think your group is fantastic. I think your podcast is amazing. I went and took a class at my local studio yesterday, and a couple teachers that I saw there, they were saying, "Oh, you're going to be on the Connected Yoga Teacher? That's so cool." And it was just very special. So thank you again. And what was your question?
It was, how did you get into yoga, and then how did you get to where you are, like specializing in mostly helping yoga teachers with private yoga?
Okay. And if my responses are just completely run on, feel free to like give me a wink or something, because I am a person who has a lot to say. So I was very young when I started practicing yoga. I was 15, 16 years old when I took my first yoga class. I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in a sort of like time and moment and corner of Brooklyn, New York, where yoga was already like very much a thing. And so it was kind of like unavoidable. It was like everyone was doing yoga. And I got deeper into it when I was in college. And when I graduated college, I was sort of, like anyone, in that weird place of like, well, now what? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to go, create some kind of career? And, I had been a speech language pathology major in college. I was thinking of doing speech therapy. I would have, gone on to do that as a master's degree. And I just loved yoga, and it was all I wanted to do. It was like, I was just living it. I wanted to go to yoga every day. I just wanted to talk about yoga all the time. I was reading all the books, and I signed up for teacher training. And it was, like for anyone who signs up for teacher training, I think there was no real sense at that point, is this going to be my career, or is this just something that I'm exploring right now? And it just kind of naturally evolved into being my career. I taught in studios, I taught group classes, I taught a lot of kids yoga. I worked for 3 years in an after-school program teaching at-risk youth, doing yoga as like an after-school activity. And where the private practice really came in, and I tell this story all the time, this story is just like so central to everything that I do, and I like to be really open about it, which is blatantly that I couldn't pay my bills. So I was struggling. I was piecing it together. I was doing what I like to call like group class hustle. And, I was working in like 6 or 7 different places. My taxes were like an absolute mess. I was like, the preparation fee I was paying was insane, because I had so many forms: studios, gyms, the after school program. I was picking up any like part-time work that I could here and there. Most of it was yoga related. Occasionally I was kind of stepping outside of yoga and movement, but yoga was the main thing. And I kind of had my first private client. It was a friend of my mom's. And I fell in love with everything about working one-on-one with somebody in their home. I liked coming from like working with a big group of kids in a classroom where it was like kind of chaotic and loud and rowdy, to just working one-on-one with an adult in their home where it was quiet and peaceful and lovely. I fell in love with that, and it just suited me. And between loving it and seeing that there was just so much more possibility for, becoming completely self-employed, for building my own business, for making really as much money as I wanted to make, I started to see it as a more scalable business than being an employee at lots of different places. That was when there's so many different versions of this story, and my mind is starting to go into like, well, there's more to it than that, but we'll get there. And I started to see that was the direction I was going to go. It was not poof, magic, snap your fingers, and now I have lots of clients. There was a lot of struggle, and I'm sure that will come up today too.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing also that there was this struggle. I think this is such a common thread with yoga teachers, especially if you're like you said, running to many different places, teaching all kinds of things at all different spaces, and not really this clear and focused, like this is the thing that I do. So when you got to the place of teaching just private yoga, what was the biggest thing that allowed you to shift, do you think, from, okay, I teach group yoga, now I specialize in teaching private yoga?
I have so many like thought bubbles going like this around my head. I have so many answers to that question. So what was the thing that like helped me make the transition? Well, one of the things that helped really, I would say, help me make that transition was honestly like deciding to. It was like I had to really decide it. I had to decide that it was really what I was doing. I had to sort of make a commitment to it. It was easy at the time. I was like in my mid-20s. It was easy at the time to just be pulled in lots of different directions with things. Like, I'm also like a multi-passionate, multi-talented person. There was a lot of like different directions I could go, both within yoga and outside of it. But I realized that if I didn't choose something and commit to it, then I was just going to stay in this place of vagueness. And, of course, what comes to mind here is like a lot of doubt came in, a lot of imposter syndrome came in, and I know so many people can relate to that. And it was like, I knew that if I was going to accomplish it, that I had to keep choosing it, even though there was doubt, and even though there was imposter syndrome, and even though there was fear.
That's amazing. I think that's so common as well. I hear from a lot of yoga teachers like, oh, I'll need to build up into teaching private. And so it's good to hear from you what your personal experience with that was. So then I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like when you make that shift and you decide, okay, I mostly want to work one-on-one with people, there's this whole like setup, like you said, like you need to be focused. And so there are things like, how do people book with me? Where do I book them in? What do I set my prices at? Or how do I create a really good intake form? Do you have some tips for us around the beginning things that we should think about?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And those are the kind of questions I get constantly, of course. And those are the kind of things we're talking about all the time in my group, on Facebook. What I'll say is, it's really good to have someone in your life that you can bounce those questions off of, like in live time. When I was in the very early phases and figuring it all out, I was very lucky to have my then boyfriend, now fiance, we're getting married in October. He was more experienced than me in business and entrepreneurship. And he had already built himself a coaching practice, doing love and relationship coaching and it was a client-based practice. And so I'll say it, like, it was so important for me to have that person that I was able to ask questions as they were coming up, like just, and not just like somebody to ask questions, but somebody that was like really, really supportive of what I was trying to do. So that was huge. And I really encourage like everyone who's listening, like have a mentor, have a coach, or at the very least, like surround yourself with people, surround yourself with people who are also doing it, be part of a group, like people are in your group, in my group, have that support, have that network or person in your life who you can talk these things out with.
Oh, I really like that, because I think that sometimes we are just sitting alone by ourselves as a yoga teacher. And so often society doesn't recognize a yoga teacher as a professional. Or even we don't as yoga teachers. If we go to introduce ourselves, sometimes we say, oh, I'm just a yoga teacher. Or people say, what do you do? Like, you just kind of like do yoga all day. So I think that's so key. And you said also that your fiance had a real business background. And so sometimes we need to look outside of the yoga world. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And then because I know you were kind of asking more about like those nuts and bolts, like how did I approach those nuts and bolts? Like, I also want to say that, of course we can always like go to the groups and see what other people are doing, or we can talk to a coach or a mentor and like ask them. But I think what's so important is to like, I attended an event for entrepreneurs the other day, and there was a speaker, and he used the phrase motion over meditation, which is kind of funny because we're yoga teachers and we like to meditate, right? But he was saying, like, don't get stuck when you're building a business and you're trying to move forward with growing something. Don't get stuck in that place of constantly meditating. What's the best way to do this? I can't really go forward until I have it figured out. But instead, to just stay in motion. Also, I love Marie Forleo. I don't know if you know her. She does B School.
Yes.
And she always says this. I love this. Start before you're ready. Start before you're ready. Like, even if you don't have all of those things figured out, like figure them out as you go. And it's also like, it's okay to appear to your prospective clients, to your clients, like a person who's still figuring things out. Like, I think people are afraid to have a discussion about rates because they don't know exactly what their rates are yet. I would say maybe one of the best ways to approach that is just like, start talking with a prospective client about it and just try a number and see what happens, and be willing to improve it as you go forward.
Right. Okay, this is so good. I love how you said start before we're ready, because honestly, I have not worked with anyone who doesn't feel some sort of fear when we go to dive into whatever it is, like an online course or teaching private yoga or niching down, anything business-wise. I don't know if we ever feel like, oh yeah, I've got all my ducks in a row. I'm ready.
We're never quite ready. And yeah, I think, exactly. It's start before you're ready. It's that simple.
Right. Okay, and so then let's talk about some of the things that you would ask someone to consider. So if we look at how people book with you and pricing, so maybe let's focus in on the price. Do you have any secret magical mathematical equation for this?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask that, because I do have something that I sort of consider an equation, and I kind of consider it like the only equation you will ever need to figure out your prices for anything. But it's not math. Okay, so and I say it constantly in my group, and I say it constantly to the people that I do one-on-one mentoring with. It's you need to ask yourself, what is the rate at which you can show up feeling really excited to be there and leave feeling completely nourished by the exchange? Okay,
Right.
so, and then obviously there's so much more to say about that. And I think when teachers are newer, it's a little bit like, well, I'd be excited to teach no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
And for the newer teachers, I would say try to look into the future a little bit. And, kind of try to like put on the shoes of, once, I've been doing this for a few years, then what would the rate be that I would show up feeling like really excited to be there, really like ready to do my best work possible with somebody. And, Shannon, I'm not saying that it isn't possible to show up excited and do great work without pay or without high pay. But I am saying that in the bigger picture of having a business, like it's not always possible to do that. We can't always show up and work for free. It is possible to work into your business model, something like a sliding scale, something like, okay, one time a week, I do a donation-based thing. But the equation is more for like the bulk of your time is, of what's going to create your annual income.
Right. And I hear you talking online a lot that it is possible to make a good income from teaching yoga and teaching private yoga. Can you give us some insight into what that might look like? So if we're showing up and we decide that, yeah, this is the price that I've set and I feel good with this. I know it depends on everyone's area, like what your expenses are and all of that. But can you give us an example, because you work with a lot of yoga teachers, of what an average income might be?
Yeah, sure. Like annually,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
I mean, I have no secrets. I'll just be completely transparent about my own finances. I have a video where I share what like a $7,000 month looked like for me in private yoga. So my annual income for 2018 was just under 100 grand. And that was partially private yoga and partially some of the coaching, mentoring stuff that I'm doing. But like an average month for me these days in private yoga is around 8,000, and then you want to factor in like time off. My clients are away sometimes, I'm away sometimes. So I think that, it, of course, like you said, it depends where you are. It depends on your, and then we're also talking before taxes, but I think it's definitely doable that pretty much like anyone anywhere could earn like at least 60 grand annually if they were focusing exclusively on their private practice. And I think a much higher number is absolutely possible than that.
Right. I think this is really key. And I love that you just brought in the numbers right away. Like it'd be
Yeah.
so great if we can start sharing, what am I making as a yoga teacher? Or what do I need to make to cover my expenses or to be self-employed? So to be having that money conversation is amazing. Thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any tips on how to attract the people who are going to pay that? Because it's not for everyone. Some people are like, I
Yeah.
can go to the Y and it's included in my membership, or it's only $8 or $10. So why would I pay like $100 to $150 an hour
Mm-hmm.
for your class? So how do we attract those people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's, of course, a question that comes up a lot and that I have a lot to say about. So one of the things that comes to mind is around like branding. So I talk about this a lot. Like when I was working on sort of developing the brand of Private Yoga Brooklyn, which is what I call my private practice, I really did a lot of work around customer avatar or client avatar, which I think most people listening are somewhat familiar, but it's this concept that like when we're creating marketing, we're not trying to appeal to everyone, right? If you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. The idea of the client avatar, the customer avatar, is you're getting as specific as possible, kind of taking the people that you would work with, who would hire you, and kind of smush them into like one avatar of a person. And so I did a lot of work on that and got clear on who that person would be. And when I created my website, privateyogabrooklyn.com, I created it with that person in mind, and on every level. So the colors, the copy, right? Like the language I used, you know, the images. I made sure that the images represented the kind of person that the person who I'm teaching in the photos actually is one of my clients. And I thought to myself, I would love to have more clients like her, because she's one of my favorite people to work with. She's fantastic. And, you know, the rate that she's able to pay is nourishing to me. And so I put her right in the images. And so, you know, the branding should speak to the people that you're trying to attract.
Right. And within this branding as well, does that include niching down and specializing, or does it need to? Do we need to do that?
I mean, you know, I always feel a little bit like here and there when it comes to niching. And I know you talk a lot about niching, and I believe that niching is great. I love that you talk about that a lot. I think niching is powerful, and it serves the teacher because it gives them more of a focus, and it's like dharana, it's like a focus, it's drishti, it's like, where are you looking? You know, like, we're not doing everything. And it serves the client because they're more able to find the person. So, you know, at the same time, like, I've also played with this idea that, like, and you said it yourself at the beginning of this talk, that private lessons can almost be a niche in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed the opportunity for that when I sat down. This was like before I created my thing, before I built my brand. I sat down at my computer and I just thought, like, okay, I'm a person, I'm looking for one-on-one lessons. I'm in New York. I sit down at Google and I type in like private yoga lessons, and I looked at what came up, and what I saw was not much, actually. And I was kind of like, my jaw dropped. I was like, wait a minute, I'm in New York City. I'm in the center of the universe and like the most, you know, bustling metropolis of the world. And I saw some teachers, and I knew some of them, and I was like, oh, awesome, good for them. Like, they're coming up at the top. But when I looked at their website, like, it was like a yoga teacher's website with like a page about private lessons. And I just saw this huge opportunity. I was like, oh, like, I could just create a service that is specifically about the personalized one-on-one experience. And so I'm like, do I have a niche? Don't I? I certainly, I niche in the private instruction. I don't teach everyone. But yeah, did that answer your question?
It did. And then I feel like, well, I love how you brought in the brand and how teaching that one-on-one yoga could be the niche in itself, and how you had this student in mind, so that it all worked in together of like your mindset of, this is the thing I'm going to do. I would encourage our listeners to Google like private yoga in their area and see what pops up, because I am surprised as well. I just thought in New York you would have that pop up.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
One other question that I had is, someone asked this question. Hold on, let me find it, because it was really good. It went right in there. These are amazing questions, all of you. Thank you. It's what's fueling my questions here. I wanted to ask you a question around the pricing of, do we supply packages, or do we tell people that they get a reduced rate if there's a group of 2 or 3? Like, how does that play into the pricing as well?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I do is I do an intro session with the person, and I kind of feel it out. And if I can tell from the intro session that we are like definitely a match, and they're totally in, and it feels just like mutually like, yes, we're working together, I might go right to a package there and then. And my packages are just usually packages of 10. I don't personally offer discounts on them. In general, I don't offer discounts unless they're requested. So people ask about this all the time. There seems to be this assumption that if it's a package, it should be discounted. I have done it that way. And I got to a point where I realized, like, I think it'll depend who you're working with, but I realized that about my clients, that they're not really like discount shoppers. They're not really looking for a discount. I didn't need to give discounts as incentive for them to buy the package. I realized that. And once I realized that, I just said to myself, like, these discounts, they're hurting my sales, because I'm also paying taxes and I'm also paying expenses. And like, when I chop off more of my income with these discounts, like it adds up. And if I don't need to give them, then why? It reminds me of Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements.
Mm-hmm.
I love don't make assumptions.
Right.
And this is a great example of that. Like, if don't assume that somebody needs a discount, right? And don't assume that the only way they would buy a package is if you offered it with a discount. It does require that you like take a little risk and try just selling something at full price. And maybe that's a little bit uncomfortable, right? Sometimes I think we give a discount because it feels safer, because it feels like we're less likely to be rejected or something. But yeah, I don't give discounts unless they're requested. If they are requested, I check in with myself, and I check in with how busy am I right now, and how much would the discount kind of hurt my business, if at all. And I might give it, and I might say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not able to.
Oh, this is good. And I also love how you use that first session with someone to get to know, is this also a good fit for me?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, because we're not a good fit for everyone, and they're not a good fit for us. And there's some other teacher or some other offering that will, suit them best if we don't feel the fit.
100%. And sometimes if it doesn't feel like a fit, I refer. I'm starting to expand Private Yoga Brooklyn to have more teachers than just myself. So there's this, if I meet somebody, and even if it's simply that like their home is too far from my home, and I feel like getting there is just like going to be difficult for me each week, then I'll go and I'll meet them, and I'll figure that out. And once I've met them, I can say, like, okay, you doing yoga, this is going to be great for you. I can't work with you, but I have somebody great for you.
Okay, good. And so when you offer the package, it sounds like it's more about them committing to more classes. Is that right? It's the same price, but do they purchase it ahead of time and they're committed? Okay.
Yeah, it's all about commitment. I mean, the reason, like, why do I do packages? It's a number of things. It's commitment for them, which is important for yoga practice. Like it's the difference between just dropping in every now and then to the group class and having the monthly class pass. It's commitment. It's better for my finances to have more money up front. It's better for my bank account. And it's also just like one less thing to do in the session. If payment is part of it every single time, like it's just one less thing. I don't have to worry about reminding them. They don't have to remember.
Yeah, I can tell that you've done a lot of work around money mindset and with this. So thank you. It's so good for us to hear, like, this is possible, and it's possible to make a living and to continue to serve. Like you said, you're expanding. So that means that you're hiring other teachers and you're helping more people. This is amazing. Was there a point of transitioning from group to private? Was there a point of like, oh, I should hang on to these group classes because that's where I meet people and get in front of them?
Great question. I get it all the time. So I'm going to share this. This is fun. I have never, ever gotten a private client from my group classes. Not of the, I've maybe worked with like 20 to 30 private clients over the past few years. I don't think a single one was directly a student from a group class. I think I did maybe once or twice do a private with somebody who was a friend or a relative of somebody from a group class, but none of those ever became long-term clients. So, yes, I did go through, should I hold on to my group classes? But no, it was not because I thought it would help me reach more private clients. I held on to group classes for a while because I liked teaching them, because I was learning a lot from teaching them, and because I felt committed to them. You know, it was just something I was doing. I'm currently not teaching groups. That's recent. I was teaching one yin yoga class that I absolutely adored for many years, and it was a Sunday afternoon. And it was like one of these things I was so torn about, should I keep it or should I give it up? But I was just ready to have the weekend be the weekend again.
Right.
So I gave that up. I'm not, it's not that I'm not planning to ever teach groups again. It's not like I'm like, yay, no more groups. I would like to teach groups again. I'm just kind of taking a break from it right now. It's not my focus right now.
Right. Okay. That's so good to know. That got me thinking. You're right. I don't know that I've ever booked someone from a group, mostly from workshops, I would say, because then people hear the information and then say, how can I work with you further? Where do you think where do you get in front of your potential students the most? What is the most effective in terms of marketing and visibility?
Yeah, for me, I would say it's my website. I did a lot of work on my website. I worked with a really great web designer who is also the photographer who took the photos. And we did a lot of work on search engine optimization. And, it comes up at the top of a search, which is huge. And it's not just about that though. It's like, it's gotta be both. It's gotta be both like search engine worthy. And once you're in the site, it's a beautiful site. It's client focused or customer focused is kind of like the marketing language. It is a website that I made for my prospective clients to find me and figure out if I'm the one for them. And I made it as easy as possible for them to reach out to me. It's not a website it's not a typical yoga teacher website, right? A lot of yoga teacher websites, I would say they're business focused, or not business focused, but they're teacher focused. They're putting the teacher in the spotlight. So privateyogabrooklyn.com was all about putting the client and their needs and what they're looking for and what sort of problems they're looking to solve in the spotlight.
This is so key. Anyone who is about to do a website overhaul or just a little, every once in a while it needs a refresh. Your About Me page is really not about you. It's about your students. And I look back at mine and I'm like, oh, wow, I need to edit that. That sounds a lot like all the trainings I took or all of the things I did or my yoga journey. And unless it ties in with my students, it's not as helpful. That's so good. So your website you feel is number one. What are some of the other ways that we can attract our private yoga students?
Definitely, yeah. I always say, like, have yourself listed on as many places as you can online. Business listings, like Google business listing, a Yelp listing. When we're listed in all of these places, they like reinforce each other. It sort of strengthens your web presence, and it helps all of your listings sort of rise up to the top. You want to have great reviews on all of these places. And I don't want to put in anybody's head that online is the only way to get clients at all. I have gotten a lot of my clients that way. So a lot of them have also come through referrals from each other. And I really like to share this, that though I didn't build my business this way, it is entirely possible to build your entire practice without ever going on the computer.
Right.
It really
Yeah,
is. I mean, the computer helps, but my fiance's coaching practice, it's entirely referrals from people that he goes out and he meets people and he speaks confidently about what he does. and they flock to him and they refer to him, and he does such amazing work with people that they just refer him to everyone.
Thank you for that. What does it look like? A lot of our yoga teacher listeners have been asking, what does a one-on-one session look like? So you talked about the initial meeting this person. What does an average class look like for
Yeah.
yours? Or
Yeah, it's great. The biggest thing I want to say about that to everyone is like, don't overthink it. I think that this is like a motion, not meditation. A good example of that is because I hear yoga teachers getting a little bit worked up over like, how is it different from a group class? Like, should I have a sequence or should I not? I would say this is what inside one of my sessions looks like, and I'll just tell you what my session this morning was like. So it was an 8 a.m. session. I work with her before she starts her work day, and I come in. She's still having her coffee. We sit down on the ground. She's on her mat. I'm sitting in front of her, and we're chatting. We're checking in. I always ask in the beginning, like the main questions I ask are, how are you feeling? How's your body feeling? I'm just checking in, and I would never start a session without like a good 5-minute, just like face-to-face check-in.
okay.
Yeah, that's, I mean, maybe it's my style, but I believe that that's actually what helps. I think that's what helps build those long-term relationships. I think that's why my clients work with me long-term, is that I don't just come in, teach the yoga and leave so much. I come in and I connect with them as a human being. My heart's open. How are you? And then as far as like everyone always wants to know, to sequence or not to sequence. If you're a newer teacher, have a sequence no matter where you're teaching, right? Like, whether it's a group or a private, come in prepared with a really clear idea of what you want to teach. Do I personally always bring a sequence to work with my clients at this point? No. Sometimes it's just like, it's so similar as with groups. It's sometimes I do have one. Sometimes it's more of a theme. Sometimes it's more of like a couple things I want to explore. But more than anything, because it is one-on-one, when I check in with them and ask them, how are you? It's like in that check-in that I'm tweaking the plan, changing the plan, throwing something out the window. So then I do a session. I always do Shavasana, of course. Shavasana is still just as important in private sessions. I did once have somebody ask me, like, do you still do Shavasana? I was like, yes, of course. It's the best part. And at the end, I always do like a checkout, like, how was that for you? How are you feeling now? Anything you want to share? And then like, same time next week.
Right.
Yeah. Like the therapist, right? So same time next week.
This is so good. And I love how you brought in like, be prepared, have something there. And then it really is that check-in time. I find the same thing when I work one-on-one with people. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Sometimes with people, we're building towards, doing the sequence and working on a sequence that's designed for them, customized to them. And other people are completely different. Some people are like, I want to learn as many different yoga poses as possible, in our whatever. I do packages of 4, or they're working towards a specific goal. Like, I want to be able to get down, sit on the floor, and then get back up again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's all about like learning about them in the beginning. And yeah, if there's like a thing they're working on, then the sequences are going to focus on that. Absolutely.
Great. I might do a little rapid fire question here.
Okay.
So that we try and get the rest of these questions in. These are amazing, and I think we might have to do a part 2 at some point.
I would love that. Yeah,
Okay.
it feels too short.
Because Jenny was asking to see a really simple private client intake form. So I don't know if you have a resource for that or an example.
Okay, so what I do have on my website, and this is my other website, it's abundantyogicoach.com. So you can find, like on Private Yoga Brooklyn, you can find like a page about what I do with teachers, but I sort of built that out as like a separate thing. What I have on there on abundantyogicoach.com is I have a template of the liability waiver that I have everybody sign, which is super important. And I also on there is like the contract that I have them sign, which is like like they're signing up. It has like policies, so teachers can take a look at like things like my cancellation policies and scheduling policies, and that's available. As far as an intake form, this was Jenny's question. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Jenny, if you're still watching, as far as an intake form, I used to do one, and it basically had like name, address, email address, all of that good stuff. And then it had some questions about their health. I reached a point where I realized that it was a liability issue for me to be collecting health information. So I stopped collecting health information. And then I realized that my intake form was really just like their name, address, and phone number, and that I didn't really need the piece of paper or to like waste their 2 minutes doing that. So I don't do one anymore. I make sure I get all of that information in my phone, and I make sure I have like their contact info. But no, I don't do an intake form anymore because it is a liability issue if you have in writing that they are injured, pregnant, right? If something then happens, you are more liable because you had it in writing.
We did a great podcast episode with a Canadian insurance company. And just so, because a lot of people are starting to ask now, in terms of the liability, we covered that in that interview. And in Canada, we are encouraged to ask on our waiver. So I would say definitely check in with your insurance company, which you obviously did. And they were like, okay, hold off and stop doing that. Also, our yoga therapists are more liable. And as you are more experienced and have more training, you're more liable because you should technically know more. So it is something to look into, and I will link to that episode for sure. And hopefully that will answer a lot of questions. But it's important to reach out to your own insurance company. Do you have one that you love in the US?
Thank you. Yeah, that's really fascinating. I love learning the differences between Canada and the US. It's always interesting. And yeah, thank you for that. Everyone should check with their own insurance company. The insurance that I use is Be Yogi. And the reason that I like it is that, I wanted to make sure that I had an insurance that would travel with me everywhere I teach. So that's what they do. They cover me teaching in people's homes. And that was the most important thing because I didn't want insurance that was only for studios.
Right. Oh, this is so important. So that episode, I think you'll find really fascinating. It's with Lackner and McLennan here in Canada. I know that we are required to have 5 million liability with them. And I know other US teachers say that it's not that much for them. And I think our UK teachers are like, I want to say it's something like 20 million. It's very high. So it's interesting, and it's not the same. It's probably not even the same state to state. So
Right.
yeah, check into it for sure. The US based company you said is beyogi.com.
Yeah, I think so.
I remember them connecting with me, and they were called something else that had magazine in the name. So I'll make sure to link to our insurance article. They're in there, as well as the insurance podcast. Great questions. Thank you for answering that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I could talk about this stuff all day.
Okay, so let me see. I have 3 minutes, everyone here, and I that's me staying on time. I actually have a little bit more than that. Let me see. Oh, these are such good questions.
I'm trying to think if there's like an area we didn't really get to, but anyway, I'll let you.
Yeah. Let me find one that will be really good to kind of wrap it up.
Oh, good idea.
So, what would you say if we're thinking that we want to gravitate towards or book more one on one yoga? Maybe we're a new teacher or maybe we're an experienced teacher. Where do you think we should begin? Should we start to practice on some friends? Should we, just get in there and start trying to find people to sign up with us? What would be like, okay, here's the first step. Let's do this.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking like somebody who's new teacher, has never taught a private client. They want to like take the first step towards growing private clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, part of me wants to say, yeah, like start doing one-on-ones with friends. You could totally do that. It's like a great way to give yourself that experience of teaching a one-on-one to feel what that's going to be like to do it with a person who will pay you for it. Just like your TT had you teach class before you teach classes at the studio. Absolutely. Yeah. Like get some experience teaching people one-on-one. And then I would say, but like don't hesitate too long to get somebody in the door as your first real client. You could get somebody in the door at a discounted rate if that makes you feel more comfortable about feeling it out. I think like some of the best clients for that are like if your parents are of any age really, depending on the age that you're comfortable working with. But my very first private client, it was a friend of my mom's, and it was such a nice way to just like work with somebody that was not really family, not really a friend, but somewhat connected. And I charged her like a third of what I charge now, and she knew that I was new at it and that I was figuring it out. And it was a beautiful way to keep practicing and like get into the flow of actually teaching somebody one-on-one as a regular thing, and to have the experience of being paid for it. And even with the discount, I was still making much more than I was making in studios at the time.
Right. Oh, this is so good. And I think, be prepared to show up. Not, you can't have 10 years of experience until you start, year one. And I'm sure you look back and think, wow, I've really grown and learned so much along the way. And we can't get that through reading a book, even taking a teacher training. It's the dive in. Yeah. This has been so packed. Thank you for thank you for saying yes to a live interview and for giving us so much information. I think that I've got lots out of this, and I already teach one-on-one yoga. So I know that our listeners will have more questions for you. Where can they find you? Because I'd love for you to share your Facebook group and your website.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to find me. My Facebook group is Mastering the Biz of Private Yoga, and it's a really wonderful resource, wonderful community. My website for the work I do with teachers is abundantyogicoach.com. And I have a free training coming up. It's starting next week. And anyone who wants to sign up for that, it's abundantyogicoach.com/register.
Yay. And what is that free training on? Is that specifically, let's dive in and start teaching one-on-one yoga?
Pretty much. It's I'm calling it the Private Yoga Business Blueprint. And I've never done a training quite like this. It's the first time that I'm using like a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I've done with teachers up to this point has been more like group coaching format or one-on-one coaching format. It's been more of like a coaching mentorship vibe. This is the first time that I'm really approaching it like a training, and I'm really kind of like going to use visuals and kind of it's the blueprint. So I'm going to be showing everybody like what can a private yoga business schedule look like, and what can the income look like, and what's possible. And then of course getting into like how to get the clients, because I'm all about that. I'm all about helping teachers like actually get the clients in the door, because I know that's often the hardest part.
That's amazing. So are live people here for them again? What is that link?
Absolutely. It's abundantyogicoach.com/register.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And thank you to everyone who showed up here live, asked amazing questions. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much, Shannon. This was really great. And I'm, again, just honored to be featured. And I think you're fantastic. And I appreciate all the amazing stuff that you do for teachers.
All right. Let's stay connected. I feel like we should do this again.
I would love that. Yeah, part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so
Bye.
much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.